Do you think you are right brain or left brain? If you do a quick search on YouTube, you will find tons of tests claiming to reveal whether your right or left brain dominates. Let's briefly try the most popular one together. It's quite interesting. In this video, everyone sees a dancer spinning, but which direction is she spinning for you? These tests claim that if you see the dancer turning clockwise, this means that you have a right hemisphere dominance, so you have a creative personality. Or if you see her spinning counterclockwise, you're supposedly left brain, more logical. But while it's funny to play with it, it's just an optical illusion. In fact, it's possible to see her spin both ways. You can even consciously switch the direction you see the dancer spin by tilting your screen or focusing your attention on the intention of seeing her turning the other way. If you want, you can mute the video and go back, have fun trying it out. But don't be fooled. Whether you see the dancer spinning clockwise or counterclockwise, it says absolutely nothing about your brain hemisphere's dominance or your personality. So, how did we get here? How did this myth come about? And most importantly, what are the hidden neuroscientific truths behind this myth? It all started in the 1950s, when scientist Roger Sperry, who would later win a Nobel Prize for his research, studied patients in a very unusual situation. At the time, for severe epilepsy cases, surgeons would sever the corpus callosum, the bundle of nerves that connects the two brain hemispheres. This maneuver reduced brain excitability and thus bring down the intensity of seizures. So these people had their right and left hemisphere separated, allowing Sperry to observe which functions are generally supported by the right or left hemisphere. The results were interesting, but not very consistent. And most importantly, the conclusion we could draw from these experiments were limited because this observation couldn't be applied to an intact brain, a brain with a corpus callosum. But totally ignoring that, countless newspaper, blog articles, pop psychology book, and personality tests drastically oversimplified and distorted these findings. So much so that in 2013, one brain imaging study decided to scientifically test, or rather debunk, this myth. Researchers analyzed the resting brain activity of over 1,000 participants to see if one hemisphere was indeed more dominant than the other. And without much surprise, the study showed that at rest, both sides of the brain had roughly an equal activity on average. So one hemisphere isn't more active than the other, scientifically refuting the myth of hemisphere dominance. But they also found something interesting, that specific region in either hemisphere could be more active depending on what the person was doing, like imagining or thinking. This observation confirmed a real phenomenon, a truth hidden behind the myth. So let's explore that truth now and turn this neuromyth into a learning opportunity about the brain. And then I'll share some practical takeaways in the final part. Most myths spread because they contain a kernel of truth. And here, that's brain function lateralization, meaning that some functions tend to be more concentrated in one hemisphere than the other. The most well-documented lateralized functions are the visual spatial abilities, often superior in the right hemisphere, and language, typically dominant in the left hemisphere. But it's important to note that both hemispheres are involved in these functions. For example, language isn't 100% on the left side. Prosody, or melody of speech, is handled more by the right side. And that's also true of most brain functions, which activate both hemispheres. 2 points are worth stressing here. First, even though some functions are lateralized, complex things like creativity or logical reasoning, or even personality for that matter, involve both hemispheres. Second is the fact that brain lateralization is plastic, meaning that certain functions can relocate based on a person's experience, such as after a brain injury. It also means that our abilities are not fixed by any so-called dominant hemisphere. Most everything can be strengthened over time through practice. So now let's get into my favorite part, the practical applications of this neuroscientific knowledge. Neuromyth can genuinely impact our lives, shaping how we act, learn, and make decisions. So let's clear things out. As we've seen, no one hemisphere dominates the other, and that has practical implications. First, that means that you don't need exercises, therapies, or gimmicks to balance your left and right brain. Then, in terms of learning, this means it's often tied to the idea that you learn better in areas linked to your so-called dominant hemisphere. That's just false. Everyone can develop their creativity and logic, their intuition and reasoning, because our brain is plastic. So please don't let this myth hold you back from improving skills you haven't mastered yet by making you think that your brain is to blame. Struggling with something doesn't mean that your brain isn't built for it. And finally, even though it has nothing to do with hemispheric dominance, we all have a unique set of abilities and strengths which are likely shaped by the overall structure and activity of our brains. For example, there's a personality test model called the Big Five, which has been studied in neuroscience. And it's been shown that some of these personality traits correlate with the volume of different brain regions. This means that scientifically validated personality tests can actually give us some insight into the current structure of our brain. And even though neuroscience is still quite limited when it comes to explaining who we are as individuals, it does offer valuable insights into how we function as human beings. So please leave a like, comment, and share to help spread these insights. Then if you want to learn more about your brain, hit subscribe, because that is what this channel is all about. And I recommend that you check out this video where we explore the functioning of the whole human brain in an interactive way. I wish you all the best and see you soon.